Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we have from Tapir, the Pilgrim, their god, and the king of my Decrepit Mountain. It would not be a year in the 2020s without a strange UK-based experimental act coming from out of nowhere and getting a ton of critical acclaim, and Tapir fits in that niche, but also a little outside of it. In comparison with the grand theatricality and post-punk of many of these acts, this band leans more on progressive indie folk, more sedate, mid-tempo, calling to mind as much of the late 90s prog scene with the occasional smolder or splash of programmed percussion in the cycling melodies as the other high-concept experimental acts. Of course, that will spawn the obvious Radiohead comparison, but I'm not sure it's fully apt here. This feels more pastoral, pulling from older eras of folk that's allowed to be a little bit warmer, not quite as twee as Joanna Newsom or Sufjan Stevens, or conversely as wild as Richard Dawson, but somewhere in the middle that almost reminds me of mid-60s psychedelic folk. Now, this debut also reminds me a little of North Georgia Rounder by Pony Bradshaw, in that chunks of this album were captured on EPs from the last couple of years. Now they're compiled together, we're getting the full picture of the album, and well, if you walk away feeling pretty pleased, but not exactly clear what's going on amidst the thematic arc that seems to leave a lot more questions than answers, well, the intended experience might have been reached. It can almost feel more like an extended theater piece, with the poetry conveying a broad scope of emotion rather than a more direct narrative through line, even if each four-song act seems to set one up. The Pilgrim setting out to venture on land, on sea, and then up into space on the mountain. And then from there, you can piece together some consistent iconography and themes. The first act is a beginning of a journey into the unknown with hints of self-discovery. The second is then venturing into a storm-tossed extent where if there is a lost heaven that's found, it's one that is rife with decay. Then the third act, then climbing that mountain and finding, well, not really much of anything, where the language abruptly begins referencing a lot of modern things that have filled in the place of God, or whether that murky shade has been in you the entire time. It is intentionally misty, it eludes analysis, but you get the impression that's kind of part of the point, not just from how folklore runs on the qualitative, dream logic and veiled meaning rather than giving a straightforward answer, but also a modern parallel to life and nostalgia specifically, which is full of a lot of tempestuous unknowns, and is way less prescriptive of purpose than we would want it to be. And it's kind of interesting how Tapir frames all this through some otherwise very earnest folk music, and why that mid-60s parallel feels so intentional, not just in the cute self-referential way, and it's so much of these pastoral questions of purpose and identity feel reminiscent of that era, but also for how much nostalgia one might have of that time. I mean, they didn't find much in the way of answers either. It's the one reason I don't really want to call this a deconstruction, because while there is plenty of meta text about Tapir's journey as a band and how so much old folk music wanted to find answers and never did, that meandering search for higher purpose and self-discovery in this framing, it's always had some tangible power. And I chalk a lot of that up to the album's sound as well. The shuffling, brittle patter of the drum machines, the warm, twangy acoustics and strings roiling over the misty synths and wispy touches of horns, the occasional jagged smolder of electric distortion in the second act, some subtle choral vocals around that winsome lead, where on the hooks of songs like A Grassy Knoll, Broken Arc, Eidolon, they're low-key but deceptively strong, or hell, maybe it's just the songs like My God and Swallow that I can imagine slipping onto the weirder side of 2000's adult alternative, or that ramshackle crescendo on the excellent closer Mountain Song. But pulling it all together, you know, I'm kind of a little bit stunned how much this resonated with me. Maybe it is nostalgia for sounds that I've liked for years, pushed through a very meta-modern framing that can prod at some of the edges while still finding a real emotional core. Maybe it is the gorgeous, shaggy production. Maybe it is the feel of experimentation that is so fully formed that this long gestating debut can actually stick the landing. Whatever it is, this is absolutely excellent. You probably missed it. You might not get it. I'm still not quite sure that I get it, but please give it a proper shot. It's something special. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like, subscribe, drop comments, share this around, I'd be plenty grateful. I know I'm a little bit later to this one, but again, it kind of took a while to untangle, and I do think it is something special. Please give this a actual proper shot. It's a weird listen, but it is really damn great. Beyond that, though, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you all want to get involved in my scheduling process to get projects like this covered sooner, or perhaps just support the channel in general, argue with me on my Discord, link to my Patreon is right over there. Once again, don't feel obligated, tough times out there, but the option's available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.